This building in Kyiv has the most generic name imaginable. In Ukrainian, it's simply the government building. But I'm showing it to you for two reasons. One, it is the political heart of the country, where you'll find the cabinet of ministers, effectively the government. But two, right now, there's a huge hole in it.
The capital in Kyiv has been rocked by explosions after a series of Russian missile and drone attacks.
In one of the most heavily defended parts of the country, something flew through that upper wall, setting Ukraine's executive seat of power on fire. Was it a drone, a missile? Impossible to say, in part because this was just one casualty of a Russian attack that, according to Ukraine's Air Force, included more than 800 drones and 13 missiles. Ukraine's president says Kyiv, the capital, was the primary target, but that drones and missiles hit dozens of locations throughout the country. Even some drones that were intercepted crashed and caused damage below, which officials say may have been what happened at Ukraine's government building. Not only is that a target Russia has never hit before, more broadly, this weekend's attack was the largest Russia has ever launched against Ukraine during this war.
It was a shocking wave of Russian aggression.
It's being seen as a message from Moscow.
Consider how Russia has become more aggressive over time, unleashing bigger and bigger salvos of drones and missiles. That data has been tracked and compiled here by the Institute for the Study of War. Then consider what else has happened over this same time span. Donald Trump's inauguration, his phone calls with Vladimir Putin, ongoing talks, more phone calls, more talks. While Trump has been attempting to end the war in Ukraine, Putin has been escalating it. Let's try to understand why. What Putin understands about Trump's position on Ukraine is that there is a great big chasm between what Ukraine needs and what Trump is willing to provide.
The United States has given $350 billion because we had a stupid, incompetent president and administration.
Trump is not going for the all-in sort of thing like Biden. Ukraine's defense is our defense. Trump says none of that stuff.
Here's how U.S. military spending on Ukraine has changed over time. For most of the war, Joe Biden was president. But this stretch here, Trump has been in command. It was under his leadership Europe's military contribution to Ukraine's defense began to outpace that of the United States. And as the Trump administration's interest in arming Ukraine for its own sake has waned, Zelensky's position has grown more and more dire, his demands more and more urgent. Because he knows one way to stop Russia's advance is to hit back, to strike Russia itself. But another way, as we began to see over the last year in Zelensky's pleas for help, is to threaten a blow so severe, Russia would have no choice but to stop its war.
Putin and those around him can look at what Donald Trump has done since arriving in office and consider themselves fairly comfortable in their position of continuing the war. There hasn't been any real pressure exerted on Russia that would try to deter it from carrying out these attacks.
And think about how Russia's war machine has ramped up. Ukrainian military intelligence believes Russia is capable of producing up to 2,700 attack drones a month, the very same type believed to have been used in the most recent attack on Kyiv. And that figure doesn't even include the many decoys that get sent with every attack to soak up Ukrainian anti-air defenses. If you do the math, that means the kind of record-setting attack Russia just pulled off on Ukraine, it could conceivably launch every 10 days without any decoys. Putin also knows the U.S. is officially leaving the business of providing weapons to Ukraine directly, opting instead to serve as a kind of global arms dealer.
In a nutshell, we're going to make top-of-the-line weapons, and they'll be sent to NATO.
Trump's most recent position is that NATO countries should buy from the U.S. the weapons Ukraine needs, and it would be on them to then deliver those weapons to Ukraine. With strings attached or not, let them decide.
Billions of dollars worth of military equipment is going to be purchased from the United States, going to NATO, etc. And that's going to be quickly distributed to the battlefield.
The Americans are not spending a dime. The Americans are making profit.
And the other thing Putin understands is that so far, the bulk of what the US is willing to provide, even through this new arrangement, is purely defensive. Patriot missile batteries designed to shoot down incoming threats.
These systems will save lives in Ukraine, in the cities, in Kyiv and in Kharkiv, for instance, but it's not going to allow Ukraine to recapture territory.
And that's an important distinction Putin will be well aware of, that American military aid may slow Russia's advance without undoing it. When Joe Biden was president, he really leaned in on a moral argument that the world has a duty to defend Ukraine.
We cannot grow weary. We cannot look away. And we will not let up on our support for Ukraine.
It's a message that resonates, I think, from a historical perspective, and maybe it carries weight with America's allies. But the framing hasn't really stuck as an imperative for many Americans themselves. Now, a Gallup poll from just this past August did suggest Democrats' view of the war is largely unchanged, pretty much since the start up until today. About 80% supporting Ukraine in reclaiming territory Russia has captured, even if it results in a more prolonged conflict. But look at this same question asked of Republicans this time. What started off as a nearly 50-50 split when Russia first invaded now shows about 69% of respondents thinking the US should try and end the conflict as quickly as possible, even if it means allowing Russia to keep territory it has captured.
So what you have in American public opinion now is the divide over historical American perceptions about foreign policy interests.
It's also important to consider how this divide, there's a geographic dimension to it too, right? Ukraine's far away. It's not exactly on America's front doorstep. It's not part of NATO, and it's simply not seen as some kind of vital foothold for US security. Putin will understand strategically that it's just hard for many Americans to incorporate Ukraine into their day-to-day concerns when any number of issues, from inflation to immigration, crime to corruption, they all just occupy so much of the American consciousness. Not to mention, the very international order a defense of Ukraine would seek to uphold is the thing Trump often appears more than willing to withdraw from.
We are witnessing the foundations, the pillars of the liberal international system collapse. I think that Trump has come to the conclusion that system wasn't working anymore. And as a consequence, he's sort of said, we're not going to think about the world in autocracy versus democracy. He's hearkening back to a much earlier era in American statecraft in which the United States went it alone. And I think he has in his mind a view of the world in which countries are sovereign, self-regarding, motivated by their own interests.
And of course, there are other factors too. We've done explainers on Russian resilience, its ability to sell oil despite US sanctions, to find friends among those who sometimes count themselves as foes to the US, and to continue pumping soldiers into the so-called meat grinder, winning the war of attrition with manpower, Russian or not. But that goes hand in hand with a world where Americans are increasingly frustrated at a war that just won't end, where Trump has, at least so far, seemed unwilling or unable to back Putin into enough of a corner that would stop him from fighting until the bloodiest end, and where the prevailing notion in the United States of putting America first, maybe that's Putin's greatest edge of all.